So, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So, and I mentioned before, this is a special show because when the COVID-19 pandemic hit North America, it seemed that everybody was blindsided. Nobody was expecting this. And most of the U.S. economy has been affected in the most major way, especially small businesses, many of which have been permanently impacted. And personally, for you, Nicole, how are you doing? How is your team? How are your partners? And how are your clients doing? How are they affected?
Sure. So, in terms of myself, and my family, we're doing as well as can be expected. I think everyone's adjusting to the new normal. It was about 3 weeks ago when we saw it coming and knew that it was something, but didn't know the exact effects and how long it would be. So, started looking how to work remotely to transition, and then with the closing of schools, then adding that layer onto it. So now having a child at home, both parents working and setting all of that up. So it's been a challenge, but it's certainly necessary and important for us all to do to try to, as they say, flatten the curve. And as far as our clients, it's really a wait and see in terms of how long this is going to be and to what extent they're going to be affected. But we're looking, and keeping in close contact with them, letting them know that we're there for them and how we can be helpful as things evolve and change. And for those that have deals and real estate that needs to get done, we're moving forward with those. Others may, take a little bit of time to see how this all evolves before they make decisions moving forward. So it really just all depends.
Sure, sure. There's so much uncertainty, and kind of looking into this crystal ball, trying to plan months in advance. It's so difficult because it's continuing to move. The dial continues to move. Um, you know, One of the things that obviously that we're doing right now is we're both working from home, and with that, there's homeschooling, the homeschooling 2.0, and Zoom, and GoToMeeting, and Uber Conference. What do you like to use?
Yeah.
All these new dynamics are playing into day-to-day business. So, how is that working for you? And what do you see in all of this in kind of the long term, in the long run?
Sure. So our company's been utilizing Zoom, which has been great. It was very helpful. It was a pretty seamless transition in terms of using it in the office and then bringing it now home and using it. And I'm using that for almost every call, every meeting. Everything is now Zoom in one form or fashion, or our clients' platforms and using that. So it's been a very quick transition to not the usual meeting, but a virtual meeting. And so Zoom has been our go-to in terms of what we're using for our clients, and also just checking on our colleagues as well. And so using that platform. In terms of my son, he's 5, and so they've actually started using Zoom as a platform for his preschool to connect with the students, and so they've been doing that once a week. It's been an interesting change in dynamic because if we weren't tied to technology enough before, we're certainly that much more now, but it is great that we're able to connect and do a lot of what we need to do virtually at this time and still feel as connected as we can. So I do see it as an opportunity. I also see it as an interesting transition time because certainly individuals and companies are pushing themselves and being more innovative and using technology more than they otherwise, because of the circumstances, where otherwise we would have had these platforms that who knows when we would have really latched onto them and used them to their full effect.
That's a good point, Nicole. And let's talk about this a little bit more. So obviously, the commercial real estate market really depends when you're interfacing with clients. They're going into a building. They're taking a look at the building. They're assessing how it's going to fit their growing needs. So what types of technologies, because, I look at, virtual reality, augmented virtual reality. It's been kind of like this movement, but it seemed like it was far off in the distance. How are some of those types of technologies? Is that something that you would look to incorporate, or what does that look like, from your company standpoint?
Yes, so technology is certainly pushing this all to the forefront and making our jobs possible. So, for instance, as you had mentioned, we had a tour, seemingly our last tour, and probably the DC market's last tour on this past Monday. And since then, all tours going forward, we are doing virtually in one form or fashion. Now, we'll see how that evolves and change. If there is a lockdown, then we'll have to come up with something beyond that. But at this time, we are using virtual tours. We also, for another client who is engaged in the process and has a pretty tight timeline, we interviewed architects virtually using each of their platforms, which was a first for us. But it went very well, and it was a good way to keep things moving. It was also a great way to test out their technology and platform, because we anticipate that going forward with that specific project, they're going to be working with the architect virtually for the foreseeable future.
Right, right. No, that's excellent. That's excellent, and it's quite interesting because, to your point, it seems like it's pushing the dial. It's creating more momentum than just maybe over the past 2 quarters with adopting new technology, because now they're in the position. It's essentially kind of forcing the hand to move into that standpoint and become more comfortable with it. So
that's exactly right.
yeah. So I mean, globally. Um, you know, Globally, when you're talking about dealing with commercial real estate, from a global standpoint, I'm curious to get your viewpoint on how global infrastructure markets are impacted, whether it's positive or negative, and how are you seeing that potentially with the future? I mean, you're looking at it, in terms of what you mentioned before, on a micro level, with businesses that you're dealing with on a regular basis. I'm curious to see what would that look like from a global standpoint and how that might be adopted.
Sure. So it's really not much different than how we're dealing with things on a regional level, really utilizing technology, evaluating the whole portfolio. But certainly, most big cities are dealing with this in one form or fashion. So really utilizing the capabilities and everything that we have. And first and foremost, just listening to the client, hearing from the client, what are their needs? What do they need to move forward? What do they need from us? And just really monitoring them and monitoring the market and being there for them as things progress.
Sure, sure. Now, from a client standpoint, with this epidemic, do you see that this could be potentially a catalyst? So, looking at from a standpoint of the client, perhaps if their needs changing with the fact that they're working from home so much more, now that there's the need for more adoption for video conferencing technology and maybe utilizing virtual reality. Do you see that as perhaps maybe an infrastructure change or any types of adoption changes with how the client must be interfaced now for the future?
Sure. I think that's an interesting question, and one that frankly today it seems like a little bit of a mixed bag. When I talk to some clients, everyone's embracing this as best they can, but certainly some more than others. So when I talk to clients, some say, okay, you know what, this actually will affect our real estate going forward. Let's think about this because maybe we can have a more mobile workforce than we've had in the past. We've talked about it, but we haven't implemented it. And then others that say, you know what, I'm using this, I'm doing what I need to do, I'm utilizing the technology, but boy, I can't wait to get back to the office, get back to seeing my colleagues, get back to seeing my clients.
Right.
I'm doing this because this is a necessity, but in no way going forward, in a world where we can be in contact again, do we need to be doing it this way? So it will be interesting to see. I do think for the ones for larger workforces and those with the responsibilities that it does make sense. I do see this evolving, but there will be some that just will want to be back to seeing each other day to day.
Yeah, no, very salient points. So, in your role with NEDAS, One of the things I mentioned, you are on the advisory board, and as being an advisory board member, so obviously, we appreciate the involvement. Um, and with that, you also are part of the welcome committee. So, with the timing of now, like the elbow shakes, or I guess whatever that's going to happen, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be a whole new type of introduction or greeting or bows, or I don't know. But how is that type of interfacing with I guess networking and building bridges and alliances and collaborations? How do you see that with kind of the role through NEDAS as part of the advisory board?
Sure. So yes, to your point, it will be interesting because we'll be waving from afar or giving a little elbow or doing something, but certainly maybe not as close contact as we would in the past. But the goal of the Welcome Committee and what we want to see moving forward with the symposiums, but any events that we have, is to really be there to welcome the members and see what their goals are, what they're looking to, their takeaways, what their goals are for the conference or symposium, and making sure that they know, one, that we're there, and two, that we can help them to achieve those goals, whether it's to acclimate them, whether it's to network. There's someone that they're looking to meet in particular or have a certain need or question or challenge that they're trying to solve for, who would be most helpful in doing that. So making sure that we're prominent and maybe not as close, in proximity prominent, but be there for them for those events. And then also setting up group get-togethers and conversations, some Kickstarters during the symposiums where we can have small breakout sessions and then talk more intimately about some of the challenges or some of the topics that our members are facing.
That's great. That's great. And obviously, giving back is such an important part of a business life. So that's wonderful to hear. Personally, with this epidemic, I recall talking to my parents just a couple of days ago, and I was asking them, how is this in comparison to any major events in your lifetime? And they said, the last time that they could recall anything close to this was the polio epidemic back in the 40s and 50s. But they said it couldn't even compare to what we're facing today. So, personally with this epidemic, how has it changed your perspective? Has it changed your perspective on life? Has it changed your perspective on how you're interacting or communicating? Are you now getting into homesteading? Are you reading more? How has it affected you personally?
Well, it certainly brings you back and keeps you grounded and brings you back to the simple pleasures and just the day-to-day things that keep a human interested and curious and just enjoying life. And so peeling all that back just down to the basics, and then certainly just in your home or in your backyard or in your neighborhood, because now you're in a more confined area. But one of the things that I've done is that certainly with the commute that I've had in the past, I live in Maryland and I commute DC, Northern Virginia. I'm always out and about. So with that extra time, looking at podcasts, reading books, spending more time with my son and my husband. We have spent a lot of time outdoors on the days that it's been nice. And fortunately, we're heading into that kind of springtime where we have been able to get outdoors more. But heading to streams and paths and low traffic areas, obviously, to try to just really enjoy the simple pleasures and just be thankful and grateful for all that we have. And I think, too, just checking in on people. I've certainly checked in on my clients, my colleagues, some of my friends to see how they're doing. Really, frankly, on a personal level, great professionally as well, but just checking in on everyone's mental, physical, everyone's state at this point. And knowing that we're all in this together, it will subside. We will get through this, but we got to stick together as a community and be supportive of one another, know what people are going through. And the last thing I'll say, just kind of anecdotal, but it was fun, is that a group of us, friends out of New York and New Jersey that I've known since college, we got together and did a happy hour over Zoom, which they set up, which was a lot of fun. It was actually last Friday and brought some levity. We were able to, talk and lament about some of the challenges and things that everyone's facing, but then just have some wine and a cocktail and have a good time and talk amongst us, which was nice and brought some normalcy, or, quasi-normalcy to an otherwise uncertain and unusual time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I love to hear that. I love to hear that. It's creating new ways to be able to kind of create and rekindle bonds. So that's wonderful. One of the things I did notice that I really appreciated of what you did over the past maybe 2 weeks, I recall you did a post on LinkedIn, and you kind of reached out to the community, and I remember you reaching out to me as well, and I really appreciated what you did. Maybe you can kind of share with the NEDASLive community a little bit about that post that you had, with kind of pulling some of that information.
Sure. So it was a few days into working remotely and getting acclimated. Schools were closed. And I'm sitting in the kitchen and I'm seeing my setup, because where I am, I have my coffee, I have my laptop, I have my notebook, my 2020 calendar in front of me. And next to me is my son, who is looking at, has this, huge set of Legos. It happens to be a fire station that he's putting together. So as I'm emailing and responding, doing Zoom calls, I'm also looking to see what page he's on, what pieces he needs, make sure he's putting it together. And so I took a photo of that, and then I went a step further just on, certainly I think LinkedIn is great professionally, and it's always been the professional platform, but at the same time, people want to hear and see personally. And I thought with this situation, opening up my life a little bit to what it looks like right now, and then reaching out to others. So to your point, I had tagged a number of colleagues in the industry and those otherwise to hear about what they're facing, their challenges, but also how they're coping, what strategies they're using, what platforms. So just a really good interactive way to start the conversation. And I got a lot of views and a lot of great feedback. And you're not the first, and so I'm glad it was, I went out a little bit on a limb in doing that at the time, but just wanted to kind of share my world and how things were happening at that time, and more on where personal and professional meet. And so that was the goal with that post and where it was coming from.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome. And I think personally, it kind of hit home for me, because it just made me feel that yes, we all have business objectives. We all have goals to strive to. But ultimately, as a community, we're all, and as when I say community, huge worldwide community, we're all in this together. And so I thought that was pretty awesome. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Nicole, I want to thank you for all the time that setting aside. I wanted to just ask you before we kind of parting words for our NEDASLive community. Where, in terms of if you're providing any kind of parting words, is there anything that you'd want to share with the NEDASLive community, or is there anything that you'd want to let them know about, any type of upcoming events, or anything that obviously things have changed quite a bit event-wise, but is there anything new with the company, or anything that you'd like to share parting-wise before we finish up?
Sure. In terms of our company platform, our stance, which is my stance as well, is that we're really first and foremost just want to make sure that all our family and friends are safe and well, and that's what we care most about. And so over this time, like I said, just checking in on others to see how they are doing physically, mentally, all of the above, because it is a trying, uncertain, and very stressful time. and with the varying layers that we talked about earlier and the new ways of doing things. So I think just knowing that we're all in this together, let's help one another out. We're going to get through this, but it's not over yet. It might even seemingly get worse before it gets better. So let's just all band together and know that we will come out stronger, and that it will pass, but it's going to take some time and some strength and some patience, which patience is always a challenging one for me. But knowing that in doing that, we'll come out in a better place and all together, and helping each other out is really the bottom line.
Empowering and encouraging. Nicole, thank you so very much. Greatly appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Awesome. All right, well, tune in next time. Thank you, everyone, and be safe, and look forward to hearing from you in the future. Take care.
Okay, take care.